ナム妙法蓮華経。ナム妙法蓮華経。ナム妙法蓮華経。Hello and welcome, Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. I'm hoping this video finds you in good health and secure. We're going to continue with these alternate other translations of Gosho. We're finding so far, I'm certainly finding, many of these I haven't read before, so I'm reading them along with you. And the cultural biases and translator biases. There's always this sense that this Buddhist information from a Japanese heritage is being conditioned to a Western audience. And I find that supremely unfortunate because really true scholarship did not do that. But all scholarship from all over the world in many, many disciplines does that. Sometimes it's just inescapable. It's just built into the cultural reality of those who are doing the work of translations. So we need to be alert to that. It's not a huge, it can be a huge problem if the teachers or the sect or the organization capitalizes on that and builds on that even more because of greed, anger, and stupidity. It's our age of Mappo. It's the desire to be more popular, to gain more influence, to gain financial support and political positioning, ego, right? All of that. That's not to say that words are funny. If we want to propagate Buddhism, then of course we need to tell others and help them achieve in their practice what we are achieving in our practice. That's a human behavior, but it's also the assistance is for the goal of Buddha-ness throughout, which is already there. All we're trying to do is awaken it, right? So in that way, it's a very bodhisattva activity. It's a human-to-human activity. It's just like acting kind, right? But then you can take kindness and you can turn it into a marketing vehicle to gain political advantage, influence, popularity, financial gain. So the words may sound the same, but the intent is very, very different. So again, as you hear me say all the time, Buddhism is in fact a concerted teaching, concerted effort to come on, brain. I'm having a tough morning. I don't know if you can tell. This Gosho is very welcomed. I need it. Just the act of study and chanting. I haven't chanted enough this morning, obviously, because I'm still befuddled. Some days it takes more daimoku than others, doesn't it? So I'm human, just like you. My point being that Buddhism is about the mind. It's about our attitude and our intent, right? A lot of the same words might be used to talk about things everywhere in life, but our attitude about what we're taking action, really speaking, thinking is an action, to energy, therefore it's karma, and the way that we enact our language and our purpose in communication is everything. And Buddha-ness allows us to see with clarity that entire process, right? For us humans. It is also a clarity on the foundational, the truth, the real aspect of all phenomena, so that we stop fooling ourselves into thinking that we own something or must have something. That's a critical point, right? If you understand that with your Buddha, with Buddha-ness throughout your mind, your experience is based on unattachment, unownership, but participation, then these teachers that are trying to convince you that Daimoku is about getting stuff, they're completely opposite the goal of Buddhism. How they can call themselves Buddhists and encourage people to chant for stuff, it's revolting. It's absolutely insulting and revolting that there are those who would teach people who are unsuspecting, unknowing, that their greed for stuff is a good thing. Because by chanting, you can get everything you want. What in the hell is that? That is such a bastardization of the teachings of Buddhism. It's revolting. Buddha-ness is exactly the opposite of that. It's not that in our human world, we're driven by desires. That's our human world, right? That's samsara. That's our natural conditioning of manifesting in the womb and being a physical human sets us up immediately with the idea of ownership and getting stuff. But the primary drive of Siddhartha Gautama to attain enlightenment as Shakyamuni was the recognition that all of that attachment stuff, having stuff, getting stuff, is the very central cause of our suffering. All of our stress, all of our anxiety, all of our pain, all of our emotional breakdowns are about attachment, ownership, possession, loss, fear of losing possession. So how do you attain enlightenment? By not doing that. It's so obvious. So if anyone comes up to you and says, well, I'm chanting for a new car, say, well, what are you practicing, some pagan ritual for your desires? What the hell are you doing? No wonder you're always ballistic and unhappy or sad or feeling a victim. You're the one victimizing yourself. Stop doing that. It's not about getting and having. It's about participating. It's all there. What you need and what you want are very human preoccupations. Understanding that doesn't get rid of them. It gets rid of the tension and the words always fail me. The tensions and the anxieties, the fears, right? The cravings. How many times have you read that throughout Buddhism? Cease the cravings. It's in the Four Noble Truths. How can you cease the cravings by chanting for stuff? It's ridiculous. It's worse than ridiculous. It's getting in the way of your enlightenment. It is absolutely taking Buddhism and stuffing its face into the mud until it dies. That is not Buddhism, and it's certainly not Nichiren's doctrine. Nichiren rails about this kind of stuff constantly. All right, I went off on a tangent. I apologize. But sometimes I just need to remind all of us why it's important that we practice properly, that we are clear about our intent. We are clear about what we're trying to do, right? To obtain a life of fulfillment that's sitting there at our feet right now in your life. You can be completely fulfilled, expressing to the maximum potential of your manifestations through time. Birth, death, birth, death, birth, death, birth, death. You can be in your Buddha mind right now. There's no attraction to living any other way other than habit. Right? What's inculcated not only from our own experience, but our experience tainted by, influenced by everyone around us, our society, our culture, right? So this is why we study Gosho and Buddhism. To train our minds, to train our awareness, to train our thinking about living fully, joyfully, enthusiastically, amazed by the simple process of observation. The mind being the only thing in the universe that's capable of doing so. The other exegesis is that when you start to understand how that works, then this life is incredibly important, because guess what? When your body ceases to exist, when it decays and no longer is an apparatus capable of manifesting or emerging this mind of ours, it's done. It's over. That was your opportunity. Yeah, you can't rely on eternity and being born again and all that mythology. All of that is born of insecurity. It's born of stress and anxiety about fear, losing life. Well, you are not life. You are a tiny little speck of observation of life. You are in life. Life is the universe, not you and I. We are a manifestation of consciousness that can observe it. What a precious moment. So don't wait. Be that precious moment all the time, right now. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Wow. Right? It's important because this is your opportunity. And so Nichiren now, Nichiren now is setting this argumentation up to demonstrate why the Lotus Sutra, why Myoho Renge Kyo is that ultimate tool. Even in the entirety of the teachings of Buddhism, from Shakyamuni all the way through the scholarship to Nichiren, there is evidence, explicit evidence of the order of teachings, the proper order. And remember, Nichiren is having to do that not only to set the record straight, but why does he have to set the record straight? Because there are other very popular groups in his day that are teaching crap. They're teaching wrong. They're teaching superiority and mudras and mantras and chanting this and chanting that. They have gone their own way in order to capitalize on influence, ego, political power, funding from the government. They're no longer driven by the very direct and simple act of compassion for their own enlightenment and the enlightenment of those in their influence. They're satisfied with just having the big house on the hill. And that satisfaction is ephemeral. It's meaningless, ultimately. And Nichiren is seeing this, and he's like, this has to stop. This is not Buddhism. This is, in fact, an obstacle. Because it's calling itself Buddhism, it obfuscates the goal of what Buddhism really is. These people have to stop. This is Nichiren's position. And so, as he does a treatise to demonstrate how to properly practice and how that influences one's environment, ultimately, it produces a condition for the entire country, the world, really, right? What do you think of when you, this question just came up recently. I was having a conversation with someone, and they were asking me, does Nichiren really believe that earthquakes and famine and all of that is caused by, not practicing Buddhism correctly? And if you look at it superficially like that, and many of you may have just thought, yeah, is he mystical? And I have to, once again, take that apart. Because what Nichiren is saying isn't that if you chant, it'll rain, or if you chant, the earthquakes will stop. That is not what Nichiren is indicating. What he is indicating is the profundity of enlightenment, the profundity of changing minds, attitudes, and intents, and how that influences one's environment, because one's environment is you, myself. We are all the environment. Even if the only way you can understand that is that I am in your environment and you are in mine. The environment is a reflection of our condition. Have you ever been to a music concert? How would it be if everyone at a music concert had disparate opinions about the world, about music? How about if you were a real headbanging rocker and you go to a bluegrass concert and you're like, can't wait to get out of here. This is bullshit. I don't want to be here, right? And one or two people out of 1,000 are like, yeah, this is great, wonderful job. And everybody else is, what are you, nuts? Are you stupid? How energetic would that concert? How would the band feel? Would they get that feedback they always talk about from the audience that makes them perform even better than they normally would in practice or whatever? How would your experience be tainted by the vast majority of the crowd saying you're full of crap? I mean, yeah, that's great. I like it. I don't know, I like this kind of music. Right? Wouldn't they be affected by the crowd? Isn't that what world peace is about? The way you influence others. If you're at a concert and everybody is chanting along with the songs and the rhythm and going, it becomes a huge experience, doesn't it? Isn't your head a buzz with and your body buzzing with the excitement of that concert for days afterward? Oh, I'm still recovering from that concert, man. It's been a week, but wow, what an experience. Right? This is what Nichiren is tapping into. He understands that by enlivening Buddha in our minds, And with more and more of us doing the same thing, Itai Doshin, many in body, one in mind, Buddha, we actually affect the way our environment behaves, because it too is a karmic, ever-flowing entity through time-space, right? See, this is the Buddha-ness. This is the Buddha mind that understands and always abides in seeing the processes of everything. And so, yes, if you want to change the conditions of your life, it's not only internal, it's external, because the external influences the internal and vice versa. So this is the example. Nichiren is simply speaking in the language of the people of Japan in 13th century shogunate. He's speaking in the language that they experience. That's what he's talking about. There's no mysticism. It's not magical. It's simply a statement of fact that if you want this country to be more secure, less warring, less violent, right? There's people attacking Japan from the north and the west and the south, right? They're an island nation. Think of that. Think of the context of Nichiren. Is there a single person in Ukraine today that isn't acutely aware constantly of the threat on their lives? So how would you motivate those people to behave differently? Not only the Ukrainians, but the Russians and the Belarus and the countries around them. Do you stoke the fire of war? We see that a lot today, don't we? But what if there were more voices of calm down? What do you think you're going to gain here? What do you think you're going to lose here? What if there were more voices of reason talking these people down from their emotions and their egos? Yeah? Wouldn't that change not only that geographical zone, but the entire planet? Because we're all intercommunicating now, the internet being what it is, and we're all getting false messages constantly all day long. What if that were flipped on its head? What if enough people were focused on a goal of enlightenment, of behaving in concert with the universe and maximizing their lives? How much less fear of loss would there be? How much less requisite of possession and ownership would there be if most people understood that everything's constantly in a flow? We're just participants. And as participants, we're equals, ultimately, fundamentally. There's nothing to gain from another, or to take from another, or to keep from another. It's all the same. If that kind of thinking caught on and more people thought that way, how much less strife, violence, competition would there be in the world? The need for war would seem absolutely ridiculous, wouldn't it? But if all you do is spread throughout the world that you chant for something you can own, you can possess, you can get, you're not promoting Krozen Rufu, you're promoting war. I mean, how more reasonable an argument can I freaking put on the table here? Yeah? I want you to have a fulfilled, joyful life. As much as I want my life to be joyful and fulfilled. We need to do that all together, because ultimately, it is. There's only one thing getting in the way of that: greed, manipulation, and foolishness. Being in love with the idea of ownership, of having. How many relationships have fallen apart because of that very thing? Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. I know these are weird times, difficult times. It's hard to wrap our minds around peaceful equanimity. But in fact, it is our natural state. Do you think Mars is concerned about our petty grievances, culture to culture, society to society? Mars doesn't give a good goddamn. Look at the universe. If you want a template for how we should be experiencing life, look at the universe. Vast, vast manifestations. Manifestations which themselves can be quite violent. They're isolated incidents, and yeah, they happen. We can see that here in humanity, can't we? But there's always a product. There's a conservation of energy, a conservation of information, a conservation of forces. And when we awaken to that fact, the stress level starts to come down. There's an equilibrium that we reach. The equilibrium of the natural state, the natural process that is life throughout. Why not express and experience that? It's limitless. When things are limitless, what point is there to possess? It's all there. Why are you trying to, right? Hang on. There's nothing to hang on to. That's the teaching of emptiness. The more you try to own something, the less you have. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. So, let's finally, after that rant, let's get back to the Gosho. Question: which sutra was preached after the Wisdom Sutra? It was, the answer, the Sutra of Infinite Meaning. Now, you may recognize that by other names. The Sutra of Infinite Meaning, or the Immeasurable Meaning Sutra, or the Unfathomable Meaning Sutra, the sutra that is the opening, the ovation to the Lotus Sutra. It actually sets up the Lotus Sutra, right? So obviously, because Nichiren responds to this question that he's asking himself, because he knows it's in the populace, right? That's a question that he gets in his email. No email, but you know what I'm saying. He answers it, and he knows that immediately upon answering it, the next question will be, what evidence do you have to support this? Well, let me show you the evidence. Answer: the conclusion of the Wisdom Sutra, the Sutra of Benevolent Kings, states that this teaching was preached in the 29th year, quote unquote, since the Buddha began preaching the Wisdom Sutra. As the Buddha had spent 12 years preaching the Agama Sutras, the Hinayana, it was in the 42nd year of his preaching when he finished preaching the Wisdom Sutra. You know the Prajna, the Wisdom Sutra, we also know it as the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, many of them. And the Sutra of Infinite Meaning declares, quote, the truth had not been revealed for 40 years or so. since his attainment of Buddhahood. So reading the sutra itself puts it in the proper chronology. This isn't just some invented order of things, still dealing with gnats, right? Next question. According to the statement in the Sutra of Infinite Meaning cited earlier, the Wisdom Sutra was followed by the Flower Garland Sutra. Yet, according to the Nirvana Sutra, the Wisdom Sutra was followed by the Nirvana Sutra. However, you now state that the Wisdom Sutra was followed by the Sutra of Infinite Meaning. How can these discrepancies be explained? Okay. Answer. The 14th facile of the Nirvana Sutra enumerates sutras that were expounded before the Nirvana Sutra in order to make doctrinal comparisons with them. However, the Lotus Sutra is omitted from this list since it includes only those up to the Wisdom Sutra. Yet the 9th facile of the Nirvana Sutra makes it clear that the Lotus Sutra was preached before the Nirvana Sutra, as it mentions the 800 Shravaka in the Lotus Sutra. According to the introductory chapter of the Lotus Sutra, moreover, the Sutra of Infinite Meaning is the preface to the Lotus Sutra. Namely, it is stated in this chapter that Manjushri, in answering Maitreya, said that the Sun Moon Light Buddha in the past had preached the Lotus Sutra following the Sutra of Infinite Meaning, and that it would be the same this time. Although the Sutra of Infinite Meaning enumerates the Flower Garland Sutra after the Wisdom Sutra, as stated earlier, the Flower Garland Sutra was preached first of all. Therefore, that which was preached after the Wisdom Sutra is the Sutra of Infinite Meaning. Question. What sutra was preached after the Sutra of Infinite Meaning? Answer. It was the Lotus Sutra. Question. What proof do you have to support this? Answer. The introductory chapter of the Lotus Sutra states, quote, the Buddha preached a Mahayana Sutra entitled Infinite Meaning, the Dharma to instruct bodhisattvas, which had been upheld by the Buddhas. When he had finished preaching the sutra, he sat cross-legged and began meditating on the ultimate reality of all phenomena in order to preach the Lotus Sutra. Question. Which sutra was preached right after the Lotus Sutra? Answer. It was the Sutra of Meditation on the Universal Sage Bodhisattva, which is the closing sutra of the Lotus Sutra. This is why our school follows the Threefold Lotus Sutra. Threefold because of the opening sutra ending. The Threefold Lotus Sutra. The infinite meanings and the meditation on the universal sage or superior practices, sage, bodhisattva, all these conventions of naming, that brings the fruition of the Lotus Sutra, as does the ovation in the infinite meanings set up the Lotus Sutra. Remember, the Lotus Sutra is self-practice, so it would be appropriate to have a transitional sutra that goes from all of the provisional teachings and wisdom gained through that practice and training to self-practice, and then what is the accomplishment of the self-practice? The universal sage, bodhisattva. How to course in the world as bodhisattva with Buddha in mind, right? Question, how do you know this? Because it's always put to you, right? Recently, I've been answering questions on how do you know that's a Nichiren inscribed mandala? Well, because there's a tremendous amount of scholarship about it. Look up the video I did a little while ago called Nichiren Mandala, or the Mandala of Nichiren, right? I give you some links and Facebook page and so on to books published by workshops on Nichiren Mandala, those that are extant from Nichiren's hand and those that are from the hands of others, other teachers, other sects, creating their own versions of the mandala. Yeah? But where is the Gohonzon? The Gohonzon, as Nichiren makes explicit, is in each and every one of us. It is our door, our opening, our window, however you want to term it. It is the manifest function of our mental capacity to awaken Buddha within our minds. It's not the scroll. The scroll is an object to focus our physical mind, our physical earthbound saha, samsaric mind, to preoccupy it, that mind of attachment and possession, and penetrate our higher mind, our higher consciousness, our ninth consciousness, the consciousness that makes obvious what the true nature, flow, activity of life actually is. How do you know this? Answer. Defining when it was preached, the Buddha declared in the sutra, quote, I shall enter nirvana in 3 months' time, so on and so forth. I have already preached extensively the one vehicle true way on Mount Sacred Eagle and in other places. I will now preach it here in the Great Forest Monastery. Sorry, I've got an itchy eye. So this is Shakyamuni saying in the Lotus Sutra itself, I've been teaching about this, and I'm going to be perishing soon. I've already preached extensively on the vehicle. What the heck is going on? And now I will teach it. My goodness. I think it's one of those gnats got into my eye. Obstacles. I have already preached extensively the one vehicle true way on Mount Sacred Eagle. You notice this translation adopts the word eagle for this peak, this mythical peak in the Lotus Sutra sermon, while other documents we've read label it vulture peak. I think it's just a great huge bird is quite an amazing thing, and how the peak looks is reminiscent of this powerful bird. Whether you think of a vulture, I know in the West, most times the vulture is looked at as something not graceful, not great, because it eats carrion. But so do eagles, although they prefer live prey, but they kill it before they eat it, right? But especially in North America, or the United States specifically, the eagle is a national bird. So I point this out because there is a thread around Nichiren's day, same thing, of a nationalism that enters into the Buddhist rhetoric, which also doesn't belong there. But there are actual sects of Nichiren followers, hundreds of years old. I don't know how many of them remain. I don't choose to follow that scholarship. But there are some schools of Nichiren doctrine that, especially after World War II and prior, that looked upon Nichiren's teachings as a very Japanese supremacist, Japanese as the greatest country, national structure of pride, and which obviously isn't Buddhism, right? Because where's pride in Buddhism? So, people are willing to take and manipulate words to their agenda, no matter what the teaching. It's up to us to be critical and cautious, right? So, Sacred Eagle and other places, I will now preach it here in the Great Forest Monastery. So, he settles into Lotus Sutra. Question: which sutra was preached after the sutra of the meditation on the universal sage bodhisattva. In other words, after the closing of the Lotus Sutra, in that sutra that's the culmination of that practice, of self-practice, what was taught then? Answer, it was the Nirvana Sutra. And as you may already know, the Nirvana Sutra was spoke. There is an early Nirvana Sutra in the Agama Sutras, the Hinayana sects, but that's not the same. This is the Mahaparinibbana Sutra, shortened to Nirvana Sutra. And how do you know this? This was taught on when Shakyamuni was waiting for his expiration, his extinction. He was dying. He was very old, and it was time for him to leave. And that's the Nirvana Sutra. He was barraged with questions from his immediate followers, and people came from all over because they thought, oh my goodness, Buddha's dying. But it wasn't Buddha dying, it was Shakyamuni dying. Buddha is always in our grasp, right? It's a mental state. It's a clear mental state. It's not a person, right? But people haven't understood that. Even to this day, they haven't understood that. So when he was dying, they were all worried that Buddha-ness was going to disappear. There's this stress constantly throughout the history of Buddhism of the teachings disappearing. This Mappo age is actually called the age when the teachings start to fade, disappear. Why? Not because the teachings aren't valid, but because there's so much other distraction, so much catering to our idea of possession and ownership that the pure teachings, they lose their luster, as it were, because so many other shiny things are out there to grab onto, right? It's counter to the teachings of Buddhism, which again makes obvious that the idea of chanting for wealth or chanting for things is an egregious reversal of what Buddhism is really about. I'm going to keep hitting on that because it's coming up a lot and it's really upsetting. How do you know this, of course? Answer, it is stated in the Sutra of Meditation on the Universal Sage Bodhisattva, quote, I, the Buddha, shall enter nirvana in 3 months' time, end quote. Also found in Facile 30 of the Nirvana Sutra are the passages, quote, why will the Buddha enter nirvana in the 2nd month? And, quote, the Buddha's dates of birth, renouncement of the family, attaining enlightenment, and his first preaching were all on the 8th day. Why will his day for entering nirvana alone be the 15th, end quote. So what he's pointing to are quotes in the Nirvana that make it obvious that this was his last breath, right? Generally speaking, major sutras of Buddhist scriptures were preached in the order stated above. However, various sutras besides these, Mahayana as well as Hinayana, do not agree regarding the time when they were preached. Some maintain that the Flower Garland Sutra was preached after the Agama Sutras were, while others insist that the Hodo and Hanya Sutras were expounded after the Lotus Sutra was. These sutras, though not known when they were preached, should be put in one of the 5 periods according to the similarity in doctrine, which is the great work of Qi in 6th century China, right? Tendai. Now we're going into section 2, comparative profundity in doctrine. So now Nichiren is going to dive into, look at the logistics of the teaching, and you can tell which came first, right? Adding and subtraction or algebra. Just look at the doctrine and it's obvious which had to come before, right? So this is what he's now going to dive into. We're already at 45 minutes. Perhaps I'll leave that for another part. Secondly, I shall make clear the comparative profundity in doctrine among various sutras. It is stated in the Sutra of Infinite Meaning, quote, at the beginning, The teaching of the Four Noble Truths was preached in the Agama Sutras. Next, doctrines of roundabout ways to Buddhahood, requiring long-term practices for attainment of enlightenment, were explained through preachings of the Hodo Sutras. The Great Wisdom Sutra and the Ocean Imprint Meditation of the Flower Garland Sutra. The sutra also states, the truth has not yet been revealed for 40 years or so, and the Sutra of Infinite Meaning is supreme of all the sutras, end quote. According to these statements, there's no doubt that those sutras expounded during the 40 years or so before the Sutra of Infinite Meaning are inferior. So this is how it begins. So this is all kind of a history lesson of the order of the teachings, where Nichiren places himself, where the teachings of the Lotus Sutra are enumerated as superior or culminating of all the others, right? And so if you're interested in this sort of thing, stay with me. We'll read through it, and we'll get to the latter parts of this doctrine, which is more contemporaneous, right? Okay, we've settled the position of the Lotus Sutra. Now let's see how it affects the protection of the country or the nation, right? And I think that is our more salient point to most of us. So in a way, I'm saying all of this because if you're finding part 1 and part 2 to be a little bit of a rehash, or I don't mind if you skip around. Don't feel like you have to follow the order of these things. Follow your mind. Your mind may have an inquisition that is looking, again, use the tools. The homepage of this channel has a search criteria on it. You can put keywords into it. You'll get result sets. And, you can bounce around in the Gosho and look at the subject, the title, the description, and see, oh, yeah, I would like to know more about that. Because sometimes it's not obvious in the title, right? In the Gosho, A Gift of Rice, for instance, I talk at length. Nichiren talks about Na and Mu and the meaning of Na Mu, as he does in many, many videos. But the way he expressed himself in that video inspired me to talk at length, because there's a lot of misunderstanding of why we chant Na and Mu when we chant the 7 characters, Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. And because I elucidated that specifically, I made sure that in the description I nailed that question. Not because I needed to put an emphasis on it, but because I needed it to be searchable. So that instead of writing in the search Namu, write Na and Mu as separate words. And you'll get a smaller result set where those two are identified as separate and what they mean and why we say both of those characters, right? So Nichiren, in his own way, is doing the same thing. Why this sutra and not another? Why is this? And this was incredibly important in his day because these other teachers were mixing up the order. Some of them, as you know, if you've listened to other Gosho, actually ridiculed the Lotus Sutra as child play, childless thinking, childlike thinking, childishness. Say it correctly, right? Completely an insult to the entire scholarship of Buddhism. So yeah, Nichiren points that out. So this is what we're doing in our study, just raising our confidence, raising our resolve that, yeah, I see why this is the way to do it, not some other way. Right? Nichiren is our proof. He's our scholar. He's our pointer at what is the essence of our practice. Why are we doing it? And why this particular Gosho, Lotus Sutra, not Gosho, teaching from Shakyamuni, is the method for this latter age, when we're being so distracted by everything that we need something very immediate. We have to train our minds with something very immediate, contemporaneous. We don't need a practice that takes years. We'll fall out of that practice just out of boredom because we're far too distracted. So yeah, Myoho Renge Kyo. It doesn't get much easier than that. But you could have the keys to the kingdom, and if you're not paying attention, if you're not confident, if you're not determined to see the product, the fruition of your attempt, then your practice falls apart. So it's incredibly important that our attitude and our intent are both together as we begin to chant, as we recite Gongyo. We're not playing at Buddhism. We're not playing at enlightenment. Go watch cartoons, play at stuff. But if you really want to experience the depth and potential of life through your own experience, then you have to get serious. And that's what all of this is about, right? So, I'm going to pause here. We'll restart. I'll reread that section in the next video. And we'll see how soon, because Nichiren already laid out the structure of this document, so we know it's going to take a couple of sections before we start laying down how this works. Right now, he's just proving why this holds the position it holds. Next, we're going to be talking about how do we make it happen and what are the effects of the causes, the actions we're taking, right? The karma we're adjusting, creating, manifesting through volition, through will, through determination, resolve. It's all about that. And with all of that, I can't express how much I thank you for clicking like, subscribing, sharing, just listening through. And on that note, don't forget, you can download the audio podcasts. You can listen to anytime you want, re-listen to them. And use the website. Lots of information there. I'm toying with the idea of putting a link to Gohonzon research or Nichiren Mandala research. I'm toying with it because it also has links to all sorts of other everything related to those mandalas, and some of it, again, if you're into that scholarship and you like to know all the different ways and forms that this has been misinterpreted or reinterpreted or whatever, if that's required for you to feel confident about what we're doing, I understand. But that's not for everyone. So that's what I'm concerned about putting this link on the webpage for, is that it may be very confusing. It may throw so many options in the mix that people's confidence hasn't risen yet to the point where we know that we're practicing the ultimate practice of Shakyamuni's teachings, right? Let me know what you think about that. It's I'll always have it handy if the conversation starts with one of you in an email and you want to know how it is that I know that this is a Nichiren inscribed mandala, right? This is from a holograph of many, about 120, well, there are 129 known holographs of actually Nichiren inscribed mandalas, which is what I see. I'm hung up on that. So I want Nichiren's hand. I want his mandala that he created, his ultimate one, the final one that he created. That's what this is. That's the one I make available to all of you online. Because I don't want somebody else's signature, somebody else's ideas on the Lotus Sutra to be in the characters of this scroll, this mandala. I don't want some contemporary guy's name in there with his date of inception or whatever he writes on there. And that, to me, that muddies my direct connection with Nichiren. I don't want anyone in my way. And that's how I'm offering the practice to you. You should have a direct connection with Nichiren and therefore Shakyamuni and the practice of the Lotus Sutra. I'm adamant about that. It doesn't hurt to look around and see how different the mandala can look. But my level of confidence and resolve relies on a direct connection with Nichiren. That's the way I practice. That's the way I teach. Yeah. So let me know if that's something you need to prove to yourself. I'll give you everything that I've researched myself as much as I can. A lot of things appear on the internet for years, and then suddenly somebody dies, and the server's gone, and all that scholarship disappears, and it's sad. But I've maintained a lot of copies. Some of that stuff I've put on Threefold Lotus, like the Gohonzon personages. That's the nature of information, right? It arises and then can disappear alarmingly. So those of us who are keen to keep a good record of the things that inspire us, it's up to us to create our own library so that not only for ourselves do we create confidence, but it's also a way to maintain a library of information to answer questions to those who we might influence and support in their own endeavors. We can point to scholarship outside, and it's not just me saying this. Look at all this scholarship, right? I do that often with you guys. So, all right, with all that blah, 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 I'm going to let you go. And looking forward to reading on in this Gosho and see how we can solidify our resolve. Thank you once again. Those of you who can, use Patreon or paypal.me/seafoodsylvain or buy books or Gohonzon or mandalas of Gohonzon. Anything you can do to help support these videos, the eventual live broadcasts I'm hoping to do. And, I entered into this very green, not understanding how much equipment and reliability and interconnections were necessary in order to do a live podcast, especially anything over 20 minutes. You can record something on an SD card. Most of these cameras, though, they have a time limit that's under 30 minutes. And then if you get into those that don't have those limits, you're talking thousands of dollars. So, yeah, I want to head there. I hear you. Every now and again, I get people, why don't we do Zoom calls? Why don't we do this and that? I won't do Zoom because that's a petition or a monthly fee, and I don't have this cash flow that's so dependable that I can commit to that, because I don't want to commit to something that might disappear. I want to be solid. I want to be a solid, regular, a reliable source to take you through your practice, because I know this practice isn't resolved in a month or 6 months. You learn a lot in a month or 3 months or 6 months, like you do in a college class. But it's an ongoing development, an ongoing reinvestigation, sturdying your resolve, your confidence, going through changes and confrontations and earthly challenges, and coming out the other side successful. But you can't come out the other side successful if your support suddenly wanes or disappears. I don't want to do that to anyone. So I'm cautious. I'm building, and I'm taking small steps, but all of them have the goal in mind. And your support means everything for that continued trajectory. Okay? Thank you so much. The Sangha thanks you, right? And I will let you go. I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.